Welcome to Dr. Desserts. I'm Dr. Atoosa Kourosh, and in my book and video series, I'll show you how you can adapt your favorite recipes into healthy desserts that satisfy your sweet tooth while fitting into your diet and lifestyle. Whether you have food allergies, dietary restrictions, or you're just trying to eat healthier, I'll help you find out how you can have your cake and eat it too. In each video, we'll go through a doctored recipe, step by step, so you can find out new ways of making classic desserts into healthy treats that will satisfy everyone in your family. For more information on substitution methods and other great recipes, check out my cookbook, Doctored Desserts. To protein and good fat to make it healthy for you and lower glycemic. So I'm going to now improvise. Improvisation is a big part of baking. Different flours, the alternative flours, they have different absorption consistencies depending on the batch. That's something that's not true necessarily of wheat flour. Hi, this is Dr. Atoosa Kourosh with Dr. Desserts. There's a cookie for everybody in today's batch. Today we're going to make the Paleo versions of my recipe. The ones we're making today are grain-free. I'm also going to make one special edition batch for Dr. Emmy, who is allergic to coconut, and I'm making a nut-free one for people who are allergic to nuts. So this first version is not vegan because it has one egg in it. This is 3 tablespoons coconut oil, 1 egg, and this is 1/3 of a cup of coconut sugar. So coconut sugar is a low glycemic sugar. It has the right kind of glycoproteins that are bound to protein and good fat to make it healthy for you and lower glycemic. So once you've got that whipped together to where it doesn't have to be smooth, but it's puddingy texture, then you start adding your almond extract and vanilla extracts. So this is 1/2 teaspoon of almond extract and a full teaspoon of vanilla extract. Okay, so then we're going to put our flours in. So this is a cup of coconut flour. All coconut flours are not created equal. Some of them are drier than others. It looks like this is a kind of a dry coconut flour. So I'm going to now improvise with 1 more egg. So improvisation is a big part of baking. So the reason that you might have to modify when you're doing these healthy cooking recipes is that the different flours, the alternative flours, they have different absorption consistencies depending on the batch. You know, that's something that's not true necessarily of wheat flour, but you could add more coconut oil, and I also added an extra egg. So now this is the point at which everything's mixed in. You can see the little bits of coconut oil are getting smooshed into the recipe, and I've preheated my oven to 300 degrees. This is coconut nectar. So coconut nectar is slightly sweet, but not super sweet. Kind of acts like molasses. 2 tablespoons. And it's going to add both moisture and binding. And again, I'm getting my last little bits. So the way that you can get around having to elbow grease your way through coconut oil is you can actually melt it. So coconut oil, if you pre-warmed it, it would be liquid when you were mixing it into the recipe. Okay, and now we're going to add our chocolate chips. So we're going to add a full cup of chocolate chips. These are bittersweet dark chocolate chips. 70% no milk, 70% chocolate, and lower sugar than the average dark chocolate chip. So they're actually bittersweet dark chocolate. There's several ways to get the cookies onto the cookie sheet. I like using, this is a 1.5 tablespoon scoop onto the cookie sheet. And then I'm gonna smoosh them down a little bit, like once I've put them on. Because you know, these are not as high in fat. I mean, they have a lot of good fat because of coconut flour and coconut oil, but they're not as high fat as an average chocolate chip cookie. So they're not going to spread themselves out if you don't smoosh them out. So I'm just going to do a few and pop them in the oven, and then we'll move on to the next batch. So here's the first batch. It's going to go in the oven, and I'm going to table this for the next one, and we're going to start the next batch of. Okay, this from here on out, everything is vegan. Chocolate chip cookies, paleo, vegan,
and nut-free,
anti-inflammatory, low glycemic. This is coconut flour. And we start with our base, which is coconut oil. Nearly 4, if I can get them out. Part of the binding property of egg is provided by coconut oil in this recipe. So one of the things I always talk about when you're thinking about substituting eggs out of a recipe and making a recipe vegan. So in cookies, eggs are binding the recipe together, so they hold the cookie together. They are providing moisture, and they're providing a little bit of leavening, but not much. And part of the binding property of egg is provided by coconut oil in this recipe. Okay, so then the next thing is we're going to add a third of a cup of coconut sugar, and it's going in there, and then add some coconut nectar. You can do maple syrup instead. You can actually, I don't need to warm up this coconut oil because when I add my egg substitute, it's going to be warm and it's going to melt that. So let's do our egg substitute. So this is 1/4 of a cup of hemp milk, and I'm going to mix 1/4 of a cup of hemp milk over low heat with a couple of teaspoons of tapioca flour. Tapioca it's a root vegetable with a starchy binding property. And we sort of make a tapioca custard here over low heat. So I'm dissolving as the hemp milk, you can also use coconut milk, is warming up. Right when the thickening starts to happen, that's when I pull this off of heat and I add it. And that's the equivalent of 1 egg. So here it's starting to congeal, so I have to take it out of the pan, and pouring that hot over the coconut oil will melt the coconut oil. You see how sticky this is? So if I want the leavening properties that eggs offer to make a cookie puff up just a bit, then I have to add baking powder, which I will in this recipe. So here I am melting the coconut milk with the warmth of that egg substitute, which was coming off. I'm going to put a 1/2 teaspoon of almond extract and a full teaspoon, so 2 of these 1/2 teaspoons of vanilla extract. But if you have nut allergics, don't use almond extract. Now we've got all our liquid state here, and we start adding a cup of coconut flour. We're going to add tapioca starch and arrowroot as our flours. 1/4 cup is the equivalent of 3 tablespoons. Now we add the chocolate chips. I'm going to add this is a little bit less, so this is a cup measure, so I'm adding about 3/4 cup of chocolate chips. I like doing the dough method, where you kind of take out a scoop and roll it like dough, and then put it on the cookie sheet. That's how I like, and I like slightly smaller cookies, but if you want a giant cookie, in fact, we'll make a giant cookie just to see how it would be. It's like cashew and almond. And this is a butter it is a cultured vegan butter. So I'm using this instead of coconut oil. I'm just using what would end up being, like, if you cut it like this, that's like a tablespoon. So it's a little more than 3 tablespoons, like 4 tablespoons. And this is Pyrex. Your Pyrex dishes are actually oven safe, so I can put it in the oven, warm it up, and that way the butter will melt. Now we have our melted vegan butter. Notice that I haven't added salt to anything, okay? So there is a mistaken belief that cookies don't work out right unless you add a little bit of salt to them. You can. Now this vegan butter has a tiny bit of salt in it, but the ones that I use coconut oil for, I didn't add salt at all. Okay, so this Pure Monk, the cautionary tale of monk fruit sweetener is you can go overboard so easily. Like, it can be incredibly sweet to the point of like not being able to stand it. Especially since these are vegan recipes, I sweeten with only 1/4 teaspoon of monk fruit sweetener for the entire batch first. So the vegan butter, we're going to add the monk fruit sweetener and the extracts to it, vanilla and almond, because so I'm just going to do about 1/4 teaspoon. We're adding 1 teaspoon of vanilla, because this is a 1/2 teaspoon measure, and 1/2 teaspoon of almond extract. Now we can make this entirely with almond, but I'm going to add a little bit of tapioca starch because, again, remember that this is vegan. Oh yeah, we're going to make hemp milk egg substitute again. We're just going to do a dash of cinnamon, about 1/2 teaspoon. And then we're going to use more tapioca starch and more almond meal. So I'm adding 1/4 cup of almond meal and 1/4 cup of tapioca starch. So now we add about a half a cup of chocolate chips up to a full cup. Let's see how many we take. So it's true that this recipe didn't make as many cookies, right? Because I didn't, I used more good fat and less of the meals. So this one made like 7 big cookies, and so it's going in.
What's your temperature again there?
300. And I'm going to bake it for 12 to 15 minutes. So I'm so glad you joined me for this cookie bake-a-thon. I hope that you have lots of yummy cookies to eat, and that you also get out and move, because I think it's still dessert and you should still treat it like dessert and get plenty of exercise. Thanks guys for joining me. Check out this recipe on my blog, drdesserts.com. Bye guys.